Update cannabis and lower potency hemp edible ordinance, clarifying reasons for denial. Who's handling this? Auger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Name is Shagar Chowdhury, Associate Director with Olmsted County Public Health. I'm bringing a small update to Chapter 2150 regarding just clarifying language for denials. In our cannabis ordinance, there was just kind of a editing snafu where it was located under just low potency. We wanted to make sure we're clarifying that it covers both low potency and cannabis as well. So that's kind of the purpose of the public hearing for that minor change. So I would ask to open the public hearing and then vote to approve the changes.
All right, can I get a motion to open the public hearing?
Move to approve, opening the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, public hearing is open. Would anybody like to speak about this? Second time, anyone like to speak about this? I'll get line third time. I'll entertain a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're close. Now we need a discussion or a motion to move forward.
Move to approve the update on cannabis and lower potency hemp edible ordinance.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Passes. Thank you. All right. Consent agenda. Approve the county board minutes from September 16th and accept a USDA grant for Minnesota County SNAP modernization.
Move to approve the
Yeah,
consent
I'd like to pull that SNAP modernization, only because it's so good. It's such good news, and it just, I think it just warrants something more than just an approval. And if Dan could just speak to it for a minute or two, I think that would be good for the, I'm not sure if we're public or not today, but
No, we're public.
agenda.
are we?
All right, well, so let's.
I think there's good message there.
Let's,
So I'd like to pull that.
okay, can I get somebody to second pulling that?
Second.
Okay, so I think we got a motion to move forward with approving the minutes and pulling the SNAP thing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Dan, can you talk to us about the SNAP? We'll vote on that.
Chairman, Commissioners, Dan Jensen, Associate Director of Family Support and Assistance. So today we are bringing forward a request to approve a federal grant for the SNAP PTIG funding. And this is $663,000 of funding from the federal government that is going to support the building of additional tools to allow us to take electronic applications for benefits that come in through a state tool called Min Benefits, to be able to move them electronically over and place them inside of our other state tool called Maxis. Right now, you would think that would be automated. It's not. So our staff are literally taking an electronic application, rekeying that information into our state system. This, while our staff do an amazing job, there's a lot of risks for incorrect keying or keying errors. There's just a lot of time for taking electronic data and having to rekey that in. So we're really excited about the opportunity to be able to build that bridging tool. Additionally, we're looking at being able to fund a lot of, when people come through in an application in Maxis, they're required to have an interview. And that interview right now is a process that we train our staff on. And then a lot of them will take notes and they'll go into Maxis and then enter that information in here. This tool will lead them through that entire interview process, allow them to gather that information in the interview process. And instead of having to go through 30 screens in Maxis to enter that information, once that's gathered in one place, that will automatically enter into all of those various screens. So we're really excited about the opportunities that will help improve data collection, that will help improve the way data gets entered into it, which should speed the process up and hopefully reduce errors. Our goal is to better support our staff within these antiquated systems. And it's one of the primary components that we're looking at with what we're calling a three-legged stool approach. So for those of you that were at the AMC conference, we began to socialize that there, and we've been getting a lot of traction on this. So the need to be able to make improvements and modernize our eligibility systems, our human service systems, is the systems are just archaic, and we've known this for decades, and the state has not been able to do anything about that. So our proposal under the three-legged stool methodology is that one leg is we're asking the state to really stay on top of doing all the day-to-day work to keep the systems running, the legislative changes, get those entered in there. Additionally, we're asking the state to really continue to own the new models of replacing their archaic system with new systems, because that has to happen. But our proposal is that the counties will own what we're calling bridging relief. We're facing millions of dollars in penalties from error rates, and we are not able to get on top of that. We know the issues that are happening across the state with fraud, waste, and abuse, and we need to be able to support program integrity. So our bridging relief is a set of tools that we're proposing that the counties can own and bring forward. And we, by owning that portion of the leg, the state owning the other portions of the leg, we can together improve modernization. But that immediate bridging relief is going to help all of our staff across the state. And that's the part that really excites me about this grant opportunity, that while Olmsted has received it and we are the main proponents of this, it will be built in partnership with other counties bringing their expertise to the table. And when it's finished, it'll be available for all counties that want to use that, not just Olmsted County. So all 87 counties will be able to take advantage of this work together. Thank you.
So we're gonna write that software ourselves, or what?
We have a contract with a company called Clarity Solutions, and they are going to do all of the writing of that for us. So while they bring the technical writing expertise on that, Olmsted County and a number of our partner counties, St. Louis County, Stearns counties, others will be bringing in subject matter experts so that we together can collaboratively build the best approach to that. And then we'll be handling the testing coordinating the testing of that as that rolls out. And then obviously the program administration or the grant administration will come through us. But all the technical programming will be done by Clarity Solutions.
And this grant then will cover 100% of that cost, or?
It will cover 100% of the cost for the programming, and I'm not sure of the percentage, but a very high percentage of our Olmsted County indirect costs also get covered through this. So like our subject matter experts, the time for myself and others to administer it, a good portion of that will be covered by this grant as well. And there is no financial requirements for us to participate with the federal side of this.
And then down the road, it'll just save us time. So
The goal is that it will save us time, it will support our workers, and we're hoping to be able to reduce error rates with the way we're structuring this.
Yes,
Commissioner.
questions?
Mr. Chair, I would move approval with the caveat that sincerest congratulations to all involved in this. Is fabulous work. You make us proud.
Second.
Okay, my motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right. The moment we've been waiting for, the city of Stewartville update from city administrator, Joe Schimel.
Now you're gonna get the long and the short of it.
As a precious.
Well, thanks for having us, Chair and Board. Appreciate that update and appreciate our chance just to get to visit with you from time to time. As you know, we don't come up here too often, and we're usually pretty good and can kind of hold our own. Today, we'll give you a little update. We'll take team on that. And then we do have some requests for obviously continued support or future support on some projects that are good for all of us, not just Stewartville specifically. So with that, I'll let Mayor King talk a little bit about what you've been seeing happen down there in Stewartville.
Yeah, it's been, I'm sure you've all been noticing, there's been quite a steady growth down there, and it's continuing on. We've got some other big things coming up right away here on the horizon. And so with that being said, we're always adding to the county tax base. And we're always hoping that we can come up here. Now, we're the second largest city in Olmsted County, so we like to come up here and request things once in a while. And one of the things I'd like to ask you is, we have the second library, or the other library that's in Olmsted County, completely in the county. And we're trying to do a remodel down there and an add-on. If we could, I would myself, I'm sure the librarian has, I'd ask for a little more, if we could get a little more something out of the county, maybe a little help on the remodel and stuff. It's turning into quite a project, and seeing how we're building tax base, and we always go along with the wheelage taxes, the taxes on our electricity and all this. And we all pay it, and we all have to. That's all part of the business deal of it. But we would appreciate something. I've been mayor 17 years down there. I don't really recall any major thing we've ever really requested besides looking at 15th Avenue. We still request that yet too. It's just one of those things that would be great for the entire commuter area, for the people coming to Ross or going through Olmsted County. It's used by everyone the way it is, and it's just kind of a problem road. And we continue to appreciate the sheriff's department. We're more than satisfied with what we get, but we also add to that every year. We're paying nearly, besides our taxes, nearly $1 million now, I believe, in added costs, which I understand because we asked for a little more, so we pay it. But, that's a benefit to the rest of the county down there too. I mean, we're actually helping out High Forest Town, all the townships. They somewhat appreciate. Some of them don't like seeing so many cops down there. Get a little grief from somebody in Pleasant Grove once in a while. But we've just got a lot of things going on. And like Bill mentioned in the beginning, we've pretty well always taken care of ourselves. We've always been proud of taking care of ourselves. I'm not here to beg or yell or nothing else, but just if some of you could come down and take a little look around, we invite you all down there to see what's going on and see what else is going to be happening. We filled up 3 industrial parks now. We're starting on our 4th one. I mean, things are getting wild down there. We've just done another orderly annexation on another 640 acres that we feel will be coming in eventually here in the short term. It's just a lot of stuff going on and a lot of things that greatly benefit the county is what I'm trying to say. Besides Sturgis, I'm not saying it doesn't benefit us, but it's also it keeps bringing more tax dollars, more people. Of course, that brings more problems for the sheriff, but it brings more roads, but it brings other things like that. Not that we have all the problems down there. The Oda's got their share of them. Well, they do. So that's a little bit of what I wanted to tell you. Bill's got some other things to talk about, but we always appreciate everyone on this board. Mark, we appreciate the way you've been running it here and stuff. And we I would invite you all to please come down and take a look. Brian's down there a lot. We get our fill of Brian, I guess you could say. He's down there a lot. So we'd like to see some more of you come down there and visit with us a little. I'll let Bill talk a little bit more. He'll be the long of it here. We call that I told him today, a half shimmel, not the full shimmel. You ain't got time for the full shimmel.
Just touching on a couple things that compare notes, just as we had to adjust to the law enforcement contract going up, and our council was supportive of that. Obviously, I know you've had some discussions on where future library support will go as the next few years go by. But please know it's a huge thing in Stewartville, and we need that continued support of what you have done. But we got to have you consider normal kind of increases too, because what we're starting to see is with all the commotion downtown we're getting a lot of South Rochester residents as well as the surrounding county residents that now are using Stewartville's library because it's free parking, easy access, and you can be in and out. So just keep that in mind as you go through these next couple of years and the budget review. It's helpful. And the response we're getting from just our citizens on the programs that are being offered has just been immense. And you might say this is one of those services that really help with mental health issues or access to people, because obviously that library supports people, helps people, is there for people from senior citizen ages to all of us folks, maybe in the middle, to the youngsters coming on. So it's truly a service that helps everybody around. Then obviously with the road project, we've been working with you. I think started with Commissioner Flynn on 15th Avenue Northeast. We're trying to look for ways to help each other. We had a little prodding we had to do with High Forest Township because your support initially was there. We've got them to come around now to work with us. And so we'd like to see a three-way partnership without having to give up or trade roadway. Isn't there a way that we can work together, that's a project we're gonna help each other with? And as the mayor pointed out, it's not just for Stewartville. It's for those townships that cut through there. It's for commuter traffic. And then the biggest one that we've told the legislature about, that's the alternate safety or emergency route if the Root River Bridge ever gets incapacitated somehow. For our emergency vehicles to get around to the other side, or ones that are coming this way, that's the alternative route to come over on 20th and then down 15th into Stewartville and the townships around us. So we're still going to apply for the LRIP grants. We're still working with the two legislators from our district on state bonding. And so we will, at a minimum, need your support, resolution of support, whatever, as we put those applications together. And then if those two, we miss out again, we got to really get our heads put together with all three of us, you all, High Forest Township and us, see how we can just get this thing done. It's been on since what, 17 years. And so I think we've definitely been patient. Hopefully we can work with you on that.
I had black curly hair completely.
And I had hair. Then let's see, then really the last thing is we're going to stay with you. And I know you've directed your staff to work with us on tax abatement policy. We certainly are hopeful it's a tool we can all work together on. And I'm sure if you reference the Association of Minnesota Counties, you can certainly see other counties in our state that have utilized it. It hasn't brought them harm or danger. It's hopefully added to the economic development of those areas. And for us outliers here in the county, that's an extra tool that can help encourage additional growth. Or if we get a housing proposal, if we can help those developers, it's a tool that we can work together on. And believe it or not, your neighbors in Mauer County gave us a great slogan to use. They said, as you're trying to do your presentations on tax abatement, let people know, especially the governing bodies, whether it's ours or yours, you might give up a temporary 2 years, 5 years, 8 years. I don't think anyone goes beyond 10 of abatement. But once that's done, you got the next 100 years of revenue coming back. That's in an increased format. So try to keep that in mind as we all work together on that issue and hopefully making that a future policy for the county. With that, I think we've left you with a little souvenir. So whether you're enjoying a cold refreshment or warm refreshment, think of your neighbors and friends down in Stewartville. And I guess we're available for any quick questions or whatever before you get on with your meeting. Unless you had anything. Nope.
So Stewartville seems to be growing so fast without tax abatement. Like, for example, if the city of Chatfield wanted to put a hotel up and Stewartville already has hotels, are you concerned that if we give tax abatement to Chatfield on a hotel, that it's harming your hotels?
I guess I've always looked at it as because I worked for 3 different cities, it's worked well in all 3. And it's worked out well because sometimes the developer is looking at a specific city anyway. And we just feel if that added tool is there and convince them, and it's more so the ones from outside the area that want to come in. Obviously, we're happy for any growth Chatfield gets, Pine Island, Yoda, Dover, whatever. But it's just an added tool that can hopefully encourage developers, business or housing wise, to take a look.
Mauer County is offering that to small towns in there.
They've approached us with, yeah, they do that. I know on Boston, on housing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gonna ask what's the forecast as far as residential? Have you had like proposals for residential developments?
Not as heavy. We have ag land all around us.
Right.
And so far those owners have enjoyed and wanted to stay farming or in ag. Some of them have joked with us saying, well, when I'm done, my kids can work with you on some developments. I don't think they're opposed to it. They just right now are enjoying the ag end of things.
Mm-hmm.
And we've mapped out in our comprehensive plan areas that will be potential growth areas for residential. And that means work from us, extending water and sewer and things like that.
So would TIF actually help, or excuse me, tax abatement? Hey, would that help guys with the residential?
It sounds like from what I think a lot of us hear from developers, it's those upfront infrastructure costs that hurt them or the carrying costs they need for financing. And so if they can get the upfront help to get the infrastructure in and then that base development done, because they don't start making their money, which they have to do, until what, half the lots are sold to break even. So if this gives them a better boost on that or a startup, we feel in the long run it'll be best.
To answer your question a little bit, Mark, the big ones we've had come to town, the Amazon, the big ones, the UTIs, and even some of the smaller ones that are coming in there now, they don't want to be involved with government. They really don't want the paperwork, the red tape, the length. You start borrowing $100 million, you don't want to wait around there 6 months for the government to decide if they're going to give you abatement or not. So most of them are moving forward without, we haven't had to invest a dime in most of what we got going on there. We're looking at more as a tool, like Bill was saying, for hopefully housing development. To try and spur some of that on a little.
Because you can't TIF housing unless it's a blighted area. So we could abate it. There's nobody in the room here that,
And
from planning, but.
And you can set your own rules on abatement, or you can treat them case by case situations of how much you want to abate for how long. So you can set that up. You can also recover any administrative costs that you have out of it. And so there's ways you can play with it based on the size of the project or what we're trying to incentivize, whether it's the workforce or affordable type housing projects, or if it's just to get new housing in our areas.
And I know all the years I've been involved down there, it's the county's stance has been the same. It's been fair all the way across. If we do it for you, we got to do it for everyone. I know that. And that's why you're having all these communities come together. It's also been pounded into my head for the last 17 years that you've got to, they always tell me we're spokes in the bigger wheel. We all got to work together. What's good for the region is good for Rochester, it's good for the county, it's good for everyone in here. So we're not so much opposed from another town getting some business or getting a hotel or whatever. But we just want a tool that'll work for everyone in all these towns is what they're shooting for. Bill's been more involved in that than I have. But no, if that helps answer your question at all. They finally got me to try to quit competing. Let's put it that way. No, really. First time Reddy ever approached me is, okay, you take Rochester out already and maybe I'll join in. First thing you read is Rochester area economic, I said, what's that do for us? Why doesn't it say Rochester and Sturteville? So we're not opposed to Chatfield, Deoda, all the other ones in the county. It's going to work good for all of us. We're all going to need it. I mean, the way things are growing, we need, I don't know how many more 100 workers we've got to have coming into Sturteville.
You got a huge need for housing.
Yeah. So we can use the housing or we can use the roads. That's where the road comes in. See? That connects a county road to a state highway as part of that. And also, like he was talking about the library, there's 5 or 6 full buses that come out of the south side of Rochester into Sturteville for school every day. Those people follow down for the library, for the pool, for other things in Sturteville, because it's just, they've kind of adopted, that's their school, that's their town. You know how that goes. You lose the school, you kind of lose your town. So I know you're not Rochester, but we know Rochester is your biggest part of the county. So, I mean, a lot of county dollars that are getting spent here, we'd like to see some of them spent down there because the library is we're getting, I don't know how many new ones all the time stuff. So, I mean, and the traffic. So that's kind of why we're pushing on those a little bit. We've already got the sheriffs and they're doing a great job. We're getting complaints, there's too many sheriffs down there now. Nobody can have any fun on Halloween. But no, we really enjoy them. They're good guys. And Chief Cassidy there, I love having him come down.
Yeah. I can understand your perspective, and I'm sure you can understand ours too, that, if we do it for one, we got to do it for
I've
all.
always been told that.
Yeah.
Been told that.
If we increase funding for Sturteville's library expansion, then we can expect that Pine Island's gonna.
Well, I suppose you could, but who's the other library that's totally in Olmsted County? Is Pine Island totally in Olmsted County? Chatfield's not,
No. Sheffield's just south of the line, yeah.
Yeah.
But it still serves Olmsted County
Well, I
residents.
understand that, but I mean, that's,
You still serve Mower County
we
residents.
go after Mower County. I don't think we just pick on you. We go after Phil, we go after them all. We're equal opportunity complainers to everybody. We go everywhere.
You guys do a great job. All right, any more questions?
Just a comment. I'd vote for tax abatement in a heartbeat. You either grow or you die, and there's no neutral in city life or city business. That you're going up or you're going down, and you guys are going up, and you're just doing a fabulous job. And from the outside looking in, you look at Stewartville, look at all the other cities in southern Minnesota. Now, a lot of great ones, but Stewartville is hot. If you,
Yeah, we are.
Stewartville is doing very, very well. It's
I like to think
the
it's because of the
leadership that
mayor.
you guys.
Schimmel tells me it's because of the staff.
Well, there's
Maybe
some,
you're both right.
there's something down there, and you're doing a great job, and thank you.
And we appreciate the help we do get from the county. Don't think we don't. We know you're there if we need you. We think you are.
All right,
Brian's there every week, every meeting he's there. I don't know how he gets anything else done. Yeah, if you ain't got any other questions, we'll let you get back to your meeting.
well, thank you guys.
Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you for the time to come up and see you again and stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're up to the 2025 Comprehensive Watershed Management Update for Olmsted County.
Somehow this seems to happen every time we give a presentation like stormwater, half the room gets. I'm Skip Langer, Soil Conservation Manager with Olmsted Soil and Water Conservation District. And this is Caitlin Meyer. She's our Water Resources Supervisor with the Soil and Water Conservation District. We're gonna talk with you a little bit here about our comprehensive watershed management plan implementation in Olmsted County. I think we're ready to roll.
Okay, so just to kind of set the stage a little bit here, especially for some of you who are newer to the board and might not have been at this watershed-based planning, like Skip and I, for over a decade. It's a statewide program. The program itself that builds the comprehensive watershed management plan is called One Watershed, One Plan. So if you hear us refer to 1W1P, because we love acronyms, or One Watershed, One Plan, we're referring to this program. This has departed quite a bit from traditional water planning. It used to be all based on a county scale, and so it was very based on our political boundary. We didn't care once water left that political boundary. That was somebody else's problem. Well, that's not how water moves, and that's not a very smart way for us moving forward to plan according to what our needs are in this area. And so you can see on the map there, most of the state of Minnesota is either has an actively approved plan or is currently planning right now to complete their comprehensive watershed management plan. It's a large effort. It takes multiple jurisdictions. It takes multiple different partners to build, and it takes years to build the program. And so once we have the state approved plan, that helps us become eligible for watershed based implementation funding. So that's money that's coming directly to us to implement those activities on the landscape. And prior to that, when we just had county based planning, we would have a plan that sat there with really good action items in it, but unless that we were successful with grant funding, which was competitive grant funding, or allocations from the county board, oftentimes those actions went unmet on the landscape. So now we have this dedicated funding that comes to us as local partners to be able to implement our highest priority actions in those areas. So it's a really great process and makes a lot more sense when it comes to getting work done on the landscape. So in Olmsted County, we have only 3 watersheds. When you get to other areas of the state, some of them are managing 6, 7 of these plans, depending on how many watersheds are within their jurisdictional area. So we're working across multiple different counties, multiple different partners to implement these plans. And in Southeast Minnesota, we've been kind of the leader. So as Skip will talk about in a minute, the Root River watershed was one of the first pilot awardees to go through this whole process. And so they're actually coming in on their 10-year update to that plan. And the whole idea behind these comprehensive watershed plans is that they're actively being implemented and they're not sitting on a shelf. And secondly, that we're not revamping them completely every 10 years. We're just refreshing them to the highest priority items that are happening within that jurisdictional area. And so they're meant really to be a living plan for 40 plus years.
Yeah, I think that's a great point is, it is quite a process to get a comprehensive watershed management plan completed. It does take multiple years with lots of partners, and we also pulled in the public. So during the planning phases, we had many opportunities to pull our public in and have them participating in whether it was through filling out surveys, our waterside chats that we held in various locations through the watershed. Or other formats, they were able to provide input into the planning process. So as Caitlin said, it's a 10-year planning process. In the root, we just completed 2 or 3 years ago our 5-year update. So there's a performance report that goes along with that. The Board of Water and Soil Resources is sort of the keeper administratively of all these one water, one plan, comprehensive management plans. And so they come in and they assess kind of how we're doing. Are we meeting our targets? Are we working toward our goals? And it allows you to make some adjustments of your priorities and things at that time. So as we roll forward here with the root, the initial phase of starting the planning efforts was back in 2016. So we've been at this almost 10 years now. It was a pilot, as Caitlin said, 5 different watersheds within the state started as a pilot. I have to say, we didn't know what we were doing. Bowser didn't know what they were doing. And neither did the consultants that were hired to do the work. It was all brand new. And so when we jumped into it, though, I think we started sort of standardizing how this planning effort would go. And so what's come out of the process, I think, is efficiencies that have been rolled into the more recent plans. They're much better plans. They have excellent focus. And it's not to say that the root is bad. Don't get me wrong. I just think that there's things that can be changed and will be changed as we roll into our next planning effort and update. So the 10-year plan renewal is coming. We'll be talking about streamlining the process, better ranking. That was one of the things that we do really good in the Zumbro and the Whitewater or the Winlac. Not so great in the root. But I think those things will all come to fruition as we roll forward. So it gives us a chance to, as Caitlin said, not dump the plan that's in place, but to modify it, make it better. And really, with the time and effort that went into these 10-year plans, they are a 10-year plan, but really they're on par for probably something more like a 25 to 40-year implementation. There's just a lot of things in those plans. In some areas, we're seeing us meeting goals really well, in other area very well. And in other areas, you can see where maybe as plan priorities shift, you'll focus more on some of those tasks and get those things done. So you see some of the metrics of the 487 best management practices that were implemented across the watershed, and some of the reductions there are phenomenal. So that will start next year. So I just wanted to showcase a couple quick projects here in the root. These are both in Pleasant Grove Township. The one on the left is a grass waterway project, 2 landowners involved. It's a tributary to the north branch of the root. The north branch of the root is kind of our big the big branch that we look at here in Olmsted, flows through the southern part of our county almost entirely. And so the grass waterway went in, feeds that creek. Again, resolves an erosion issue. We had gully erosion, reduced the sediment delivery into the water body. It's a perennial flowing stream, improves water quality. On the right, there's a large farmable terrace project with tile. So that was almost over 3/4 of a mile of farmable terrace. When you think about terraces, there's farmables and there's non-farmables. Some of them you see out in the fields, they have like a grass back on them, and sometimes they can ride up on the front side of them and plant a crop in there. And sometimes they're too steep, so they can't farm them. In this case, the land slope lended itself to create farmables or rehab the farmables that were there that had been worn down. The thing about a farmable is they tend to be expensive. They just don't belong anywhere in the landscape. You really have to have the slope for it. And it's meant to farm the front and back side of that speed bump, that earthen speed bump that breaks that watershed up into individual small sub watersheds. Behind each one of those brown lines on the right side of the page, there's an intake. That intake has holes in it. The water collects behind it. It filters into the intake and it goes into a tile system that takes it underground down to a stable outlet at the bottom of the project. So anyway, two good projects that were funded through our portion of the root funding.
So the second watershed in Olmsted County is the Greater Zumbro watershed. We refer to ourselves as the Watershed Alliance for the Greater Zumbro, or WAGS. Again, we really like acronyms in this world. So it not only includes the Zumbro watershed, but it includes a portion of the Mississippi River, Lake Pepin to the north there. So we're working with about 8 other partners, not shown up there. I think as Steele County is missing from the project partner list there. We also, one of the kind of newer things to this watershed was including the city of Rochester. So all of the stormwater MS4 communities within the watershed were invited to participate, and the city of Rochester wanted a seat at the table. So they actually have membership on our policy committee, which is made up of mostly SWCD supervisors, county commissioners, and then a city council person who represent and move forward some of our local policy and direct our implementation. So in the Greater Zumbro, you can see on this map, it's pretty busy, but the dark red spaces are what we identified during our planning effort as the highest priority areas. So putting projects in those areas are going to have the biggest return on investment for us as far as water quality concerns. And so each of those dots on the map is where a project has been already implemented on the landscape. I'll show you in a minute, we actually have a live dashboard that shows both project implementation and the results of those projects from a water quality benefit. So that's public facing, so that folks across the landscape can see that in real time and see what the benefit of this process has been. We started this in 2019 with the planning effort. I think it took us a little longer than typical, just over the pandemic years, to complete and have an approved plan. But we're now into our 3rd biennium. We're just starting to work on our 3rd work plan. Our 2nd work plan, which the money just came to us last year, is already nearly all encumbered. So our project partners are ready to implement. We've got lists of projects, not only for agricultural best management practices, but we also have money for other things like forestry practices. We have money for well sealing. We have money for other groundwater related projects. And so our partnership is highly active, and we'll continue to spend that money just as quick as they give it to us.
One thing I'd add is conservation is voluntary. So even if you owned a farm inside of the red area, we don't go out and say like, hey, it's time for you to step up and get a project done on your farm. But what it does do is it allows us to, we always think of with voluntary conservation, you get somebody that walks in the door and is interested in doing a practice, and that's when you work with them. But instead of having random conservation happening, it allows us to target areas that need it. And by doing the ranking process, we can provide a higher level of funding to farms that need additional assistance and meet those priority areas. So that's where that's very handy.
And before moving on, the last thing I'd say about this is that each watershed, somebody has to raise their hand to take the lead in that watershed, both from a grant administrative perspective and from a financial perspective. And so Skip and I raised our hands, I guess you'd say, for this one. So we are the day-to-day leads in this planning effort. So we kind of keep the whole process moving forward. We make sure that the state funds are accountable in the whole grant process. So just like in the RIT, we want to showcase a few projects in the Zumbro. This is one that we're pretty proud of here at Olmsted Soil and Water. So this project, the Orinoco Well Sealing Project, wasn't actually paid for with watershed-based implementation funding, but it was a grant initiative within our plan. And so we were able to leverage that to get additional funding through another source to help the well owners out there who are required to connect to municipal services. So as most of you know, it was Orinoco was one of the largest unsewered communities and also didn't have a municipal water system that served the entire area. And so they are currently in, I don't know what phase, but one of their phases of connecting up their citizens out there to municipal services. So we were able to get this additional funding through the Board of Water and Soil Resources competitive grant funding process to help folks out there with well sealing. And so we have, to date, we actually have, I think, 36 wells sealed. This is a little outdated. And we've provided over $100,000 in assistance to those property owners to get their well sealed. And we've got just a couple left. There's many more who could be taking advantage of the funds. So we hope to continue to do that over the next year and a half or so and get help more people with that, because they've taken on a pretty big financial investment to get connected up to municipal services. A second benefit of this plan is being able to branch out into a smaller focus. So again, we've been able to kind of leverage other funding sources. This is actually a federal grant program. It's through the EPA 319 program. This Cascade Creek, many of you are probably familiar with the Meadow Lakes restoration project that is showcased pretty frequently down here in southeast Minnesota. But South Branch of Cascade Creek comes into that project, and it's been identified as a barely impaired stream for turbidity. So it's kind of right on that cusp where if we put in a lot of effort in this small watershed, we could potentially remove it from being listed as impaired. So we worked together with the city of Rochester, Dodge Soil and Water Conservation District in Dodge County to put together a proposal for this watershed. We had to build yet another plan. So imagine that plan that we just built. We had to build it again just for this small focused watershed, but it gives us 16 years of dedicated funding within this one small sub-watershed, which is pretty unheard of in our world. Usually we get little pots of money for 2 to 4 years, but to have 16 years of dedicated funding is pretty amazing. And not only do we have this one, but we actually have 2 more within the Zumbro that other partners have applied for. So we're bringing in essentially 16 years of dedicated funding and 3 small focused watersheds across the Zumbro, just in this neck of the woods. So,
Chair, could I ask, does that meet, especially on the right side, the 50-foot buffer strip?
Yeah, so, yeah, that's
Good question.
That's a great question. So, if you spun around at this culvert crossing and looked 180 degrees to, this is looking west, toward Salem Township. If you turned around, you'd be standing on 45th Street, which if you're familiar with the old Meadow Lakes Golf Course, the clubhouse would be to the right. up the road to the north. So if you turned around, you'd be looking into the Meadow Lakes Golf Course.
Right.
So the buffer has been laid out here, and this does meet a 50-foot. So you see where the corn is on both sides.
Right,
It's
yeah.
probably over 50 feet in some regards.
I couldn't tell that some of that corn had been picked or,
Yeah, I think it's just, they mowed along there
Sure.
for access. Yeah.
Then it would obviously.
Yep.
I believe it would obviously.
Yep.
Thanks.
So, as Caitlin said, in 2020, we were selected by Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, who is they're the state agency that takes care of the EPA 319 funding through the feds. So again, 16 years of dedicated funding, and one of the goals is to remove from the impaired list this stretch of the south branch of Cascade Creek. So we're moving along toward that goal. I kind of always thought this might be one of my retirement projects, but maybe I won't make it there. I don't know. We'll see. So, but there's you can see the stretch in the brown that is considered the impairment. We control a good portion of the watershed in Olmsted County. And then, of course, over in Dodge, they're in the headwaters. That's a very important portion of a watershed because you can get practices implemented economically in a headwaters area. And we'll talk a little more about that in the whitewater. But that would be a great place to see, covered with cover crops like our, groundwater protection soil health initiative here that they don't quite have over there. To maybe get maybe a wetland restoration up in that area would be good, but just places where we can treat water economically as it flows into Olmsted County. And then, of course, we have our urban component of the watershed too. We're working with the city on some chloride monitoring, so looking at the salt that gets contributed into our waterways upon snowmelt. And so that is a problem in metropolitan areas. We are sitting good from a water quality standpoint for chloride impairments in this area. But when you get, as close as the Twin Cities area, they have waterways that are over the impairment levels. Once you're impaired for chloride, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to reverse that impairment. So that's a big priority. Another, we just started and rolled out a rain barrel program, and we're targeting the Washington and Lower Town and Kutsky Park neighborhoods. And I think so what we're offering is up to $100 cost share for a rain barrel. They pick the rain barrel. We don't prescribe one. They can get a fancy, expensive one. They can buy a cheaper one that both do the same thing. They usually collect, they're about 50 gallons in size. It's easy to fill those. You use them to water your landscaping and things like that. But it's another way on a yard by yard basis to do, water quality improvements in neighborhoods and pull your urban folks into kind of the larger picture of what can I do to help, impact water quality in the stream that flows in my neighborhood. So one of the things with being barely impaired or being impaired is that it impacts things like, in the case of the South Branch or the Cascade Creek as a whole, the turbidity is the problem. That's soil flowing in the water column. And here it's impacting the biology. So we're seeing impacts on invertebrates and fish. The DNR and the MPCA do those monitoring undertakings, and we assist. We have turbidity sensors out there that we are monitoring. There's just a little unit that shoots a beam of infrared out into the water column, and it bounces off all the particles that are floating and gives you a value. Well, then we also collect water samples. Those go to a lab. The lab sends back information on many different analytics. So all of that is used to kind of work on the trends of water quality within really all of our tributaries and smaller and large across Olmsted County. I think. So then an example of a project, and we actually have a video. Let's see if it works. Oh. Oh, so this is construction that's so see, I, get the fill height then to cut off that flow. So the thing about a grade stabilization structure, this is up in New Haven to Plum Creek. And so that then dumps into the south fork of the middle branch of the Zumbro, or the south branch of the middle fork of the Zumbro. And so the basin is a protector of a gully head. So what a gully head is, where you have a ravine that takes water and flows it in a concentrated manner down through usually like a wooded area where there's not a lot of ground cover to protect the soil. You get a gully that forms on the edge of those trees, and it starts to cut back into the cropland. And as it cuts back into the cropland, obviously it becomes a problem for the farmer. You got expensive equipment. And so we can rehab those by putting in what's called a grade stabilization structure. It cuts off that gully head, the earthen structure, accumulates water behind it, and then there's a 24-inch pipe in that structure that slows the flow of the release of the water through the structure and back into the natural flow of the watershed. So you can, with enough of those types of structures, you can impact the peak flows of your streams and rivers and slow and diminish some of the impacts of flooding and things like that to not only ag lands along, but communities downstream and whatnot.
So each year we summarize all of the year's implementation in a year in review. Not only does it show all of the projects that were put on the landscape, but it, like I mentioned earlier, it also shows what the total reductions were for the pollutants of concern in this area. So if you're interested in seeing more, there's a QR code there where you can see the entire thing and see some of the other projects that our partners across the watershed have implemented.
So here's an example of how outside funding, not just the watershed-based implementation funding, can impact the goals and objectives of a watershed comprehensive plan. You see our groundwater protection and soil health initiative is incentivizing soil health practices within that portion of the Zumbro watershed. And so here's some stats from 2024. And you can kind of see the location of the different practices across that watershed. But practices like these meet the goals, and they help us move the dial on our pollutant reductions, and the other objectives that we have within the plan.
Okay, on to the last watershed. So traditionally in Olmsted County, we refer to this as the Whitewater watershed. That's the portion of this watershed that falls within our boundaries. The larger watershed is called the Mississippi River Winona La Crescent. So it includes not only the Whitewater watershed, but a few tributaries that go directly into the Mississippi, and then also the La Crescent, Mississippi La Crescent watershed and the Mississippi Winona watershed. So all of our project partners are shown there. This area stretches across Olmsted, Houston, Winona, and Wabasha counties. It spreads about 750 acres. And on the map there shown are four priority areas. We have the Whitewater, that kind of purplish blue color, and the direct tributaries that go to the Mississippi. And then we also have the some of the tributaries within the Winona area, and then those within the La Crescent area. This was the last of our three watersheds to go through the planning effort. So we are just into our second grant biennium right now. And so it's got a project here that he's gonna showcase our high priority areas. And one thing to note about this watershed is all of Olmsted County is the highest priority based on some of our agricultural land and our pollutant loading within this watershed.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
You don't need to take too much time. So I'm on this joint powers board. I've been to 3 meetings, I think, and I sit there wondering, well, what is my contribution to this? I mean, where did the joint powers board in this? Is that the only joint powers board we have like this? And how did that get created?
You're on the
Why
board.
did it get created?
Yeah. The
You're
What
on the
am I-
Whitewater Joint Powers Board.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean-
so
What is my deliverable?
the Whitewater Joint Powers Board would cover the light green
Right.
space, if folks can see that there. And so, Whitewater Joint Powers Board was founded decades ago. It was based on some federal PL 566 funding.
Okay, that's the
Yeah,
answer.
it's Public Lands 566. If you
Alright.
look at that, that's dedicated funding for things like flood control and agricultural implementation practices. I mean, this area sustained massive damage. You probably all heard of like the town of Beaver that once was, and really was due to flooding and sedimentation. It drove the feds to put a lot of funding there. And so the Joint Powers Board was formed. We had dedicated planners at the Natural Resources Conservation Service, or the Soil Conservation Service prior. And so they really worked on focusing on getting projects implemented within the Whitewater. And so it's kind of a legacy thing is the way that I think of it. But Kayla and I have talked about this, and we've talked with our admin partners as well. And you guys have heard some of the discussion during the budget discussions that basically is saying has the Joint Powers Board maybe run its course now that we're into have a WINLAC, One Water, One Plan group. They don't have a Joint Powers Board, but they have an advisory board made up of folks like yourselves and SWCD supervisors and cities, in this case, Winona, that would participate and guide the process of implementing the plan down there. So it's one of those, I think at one of the next meetings, Commissioner will probably come down and maybe have a discussion about the future, starting to think about the future of the Whitewater
I think
Joint
it's
Powers
time.
Board.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
question.
It
Yeah.
is somewhat replicative, I would agree.
So there's something happening in Quincy Township.
So this is, speaking of Quincy Township, here's a couple of waterway projects that we implemented out there. So the one on the left is just some short waterways that have a steep hill slope that kind of drops down into a valley, and the landowner was seeing some erosion and wanted some help correcting those. So grass waterways, you know, a waterway like this, the minimum size waterway we built has a 12-foot bottom, flat bottom with 10 to one side slopes. All of that gets grass. So they're about 26 feet wide or so. And then they would have 1 foot of depth to provide some capacity to move that concentrate of water down slope to a stable point in the landscape. And then the one on the right at Jeff Reps was a much longer waterway, 1,885 feet. So 1.6 acres is what that covered. Probably similar in size, maybe a maximum of about 32 feet. You see it in the larger picture. It's seeded, and then we have a requirement to anchor mulch them to protect the waterway bottom while the seeding is coming. The gentleman standing there holding the survey equipment is one of our newest team members, Zach Martin. So this is a great opportunity for our more seasoned technical staff to get a new staff person out into the field and have them working through projects like this to help build we call it JAA, it's Job Approval Authority. Every SWCD member has some, and it basically is what gives you the ability to design these practices that you see us putting in out on the landscape. So we work under we're not engineers, but we work under the engineering license of the state engineer. And then as you achieve this job approval authority from a level 1 up to the highest, which is a level 4, you're able to build more complex projects, larger drainage areas and things like that. And we have some brand new staff that are just building job approval authority. And we have some staff that have that level 4 certification and are able to work on their own on most projects that we would want to.
All right, so last slide, some of the most important, what is the funding level that we see each year? So this is the total comprehensive amount that comes to the RIT, WAGs, and WINLAC from the Board of Water and Soil Resources. So these are clean water funds. So that's a very important thing to note here, and that this, we're seeing an increase each year, but as our watershed-based implementation funding goes up, we're seeing less and less competitive grant funds and other pots of funding. So we have to make sure that we're utilizing these funds in the highest priority areas and also telling the story about how these funds are being used and what they're being used for. So like I said, each biennium, we've seen those allocations increasing across all watersheds. And then this next slide just shows a little bit about what actually comes to Olmsted County specifically.
Yeah, so for each one of these grant cycles, which run on the biennium, as Caitlin had said, we write a work plan. And in that work plan, it kind of designates dollars that go to each of the counties. Some of them is more of a first come, first serve. Some of them break it out by percentage of watershed within your county, things like that. So as you can see, we bring in, this represents 6 different years of the biennium. We bring in project cost sharing funding, that's the implementation dollars that goes to farmers and landowners to get our projects on private lands. That's one of the things that are unique about SWCDs is most all of our work happens on private lands. We also bring in technical assistance dollars. Those are dollars for staff. So that's for our staff to be out there providing assistance to landowners to get projects on the land, to do the surveying, design, construction oversight, working with those contractors that the landowners hire to make sure that they get built to the standards and specifications that they need to be. And then there's some administrative dollars. In this case, it's only in the Watershed Alliance of the Greater Zumbro, where Caitlin, I would say mostly is able to take and get reimbursed for some of the time and efforts that she's putting in to the day-to-day work. And then you see, well, actually, so for the 26 and 27, to be determined is we're right in the middle now of writing the work plans for that next biennium. And so, as those get finalized and approved by the Board of Water and Soil Resources, then we'll get an allocation. Probably looks something like the 24-25 biennium above it, but those will bring some additional dollars. So that's just I know sometimes SWCDs we're unique in that we have lots of grants that come in, and I think that can be a head scratcher sometimes to figure out where all of the dollars are coming from. We're going to try and put something together here coming up later this month to demonstrate that a little better, but there are a lot of different sources of funding that come in to do the work that we do for Olmsted County residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good question for you, Skip.
Yeah.
I know, Winlac, their fiscal sponsor is actually Root River. Is that also the same with WAGs? Is Root River their fiscal sponsor too?
Yeah.
Getting the money from Bowser?
No way,
The-
good to you.
Or WAGs is good too. Yes, WAGs is good too.
Okay.
Root River, which is Houston County, is the fiscal agent for Winlac. And then the Root River is that's Fillmore. Fillmore does the day-to-day and the fiscal agent because all of Fillmore County is Root River. So they only have one watershed that they work with.
But that's a really good point in that during each of these planning phases, the policy committee felt pretty strongly they didn't want another level of government, another joint powers board. And so most of these are a joint powers agreement, but we don't hire staff. And we're running projects through our existing local government units. And so we have to play really nice together, I guess you'd say, to make it work. And so everyone kind of has to take on something, and we've worked really well across this region to make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. That is a key. Sure.
Is there a part of Fillmore County that goes into Iowa, goes into?
Yeah, there is two very small portions of watersheds that I can't remember if one's the Wapsipinicon and the other is the upper Iowa that both dump in, to the south. You're correct. Yep.
Yeah, Dave.
So, yeah, thanks for your work. I mean, you impress us all the time, and even today. I got a question though. So the Clean Water Fund in Minnesota has been around since about 2008. It's probably raised, I just looked, about $4 billion. It's spread all over the state of Minnesota. And so a lot of money and a lot of great resources around Minnesota. And so then I often ask this at the legislature, can you just show me some data that perceptibly we've done well? I mean, you can't spend that much money and not accomplish anything. But we kind of never see the data. And I'm thinking about the little field trip we took a couple of years ago, and we're standing out in this old bridge north of Rochester, and somebody comes along and they're sampling water and things like this.
Oh, yeah.
Is there evidence that, and I'm sure there is, we just never see it, is the water chemistry better? Is the sedimentation better? Can we actually say that, generally speaking, we're doing better in not only in our watersheds, but across the state?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And as an SWCD in the first more than half of my career, we were working in the uplands with producers that private lands, best management practice implementation. We weren't connected to the stream monitoring and things like that. And when we had an opportunity about 10 years or so ago to get involved in that, it seemed to connect the dots. And it's amazing. So the folks that you saw out on the girder bridge up on 90th was Aaron Gam, who doesn't work with us anymore, is with the Pollution Control Agency. And I think one of our seasonal staff was out there, but they were doing the water pollutant load monitoring network program. So they're monitoring these 4 main branches of the Zumbro.
Uh-huh.
And the idea of that is that you have this the ability to have this long-term data collection to do long-term trend analysis. And I think we are seeing improvements. There's another program called SWAG. It's the Surface Water Assessment Grant. And that's a 10-year cycle that drives the RAPs, the watershed restoration and protection strategies that MPCA writes, that really is the assessment on these watersheds and these river stretches to determine if we're making steps in the right direction. And I think that we are finding that things are improving. There are every year, the MPCA has a list of streams that are delisted, they call it. So they have impairments and they get listed, and then when they get back to exceeding, or I guess not exceeding, but to having a better water quality improvement, they delist them. And so the South Branch of Cascade Creek is an example of that it's not like it's terrible water quality, but it does have some issues. And we feel like by dedicating some dollars there and continuing to work with landowners to change some of maybe the farming systems out there, or to get some more best management practices in place, maybe get more land into covers, that we can make those improvements and see it delisted as well. So it is happening. There are improvements. I'm always amazed to see that. But if you're out there after a 3-inch rain event and an hour and 15 minutes too, and you look at the milk chocolatey flow that's flowing under the bridge that you're sampling from, it does make you shrug your shoulders and feel like, there's just more work to do. So you see both sides of the coin.
Just so, I mean, with the, I think the buffer strip thing is in for 7 or 8 years now. And it just seems to me with all the money we're spending in the buffer strip program, and that somehow there'd be some graph someplace that would show the trend line going towards better.
Yeah, we can look for that.
Well, I think the state just opinion their nutrient reduction strategy. And so as part of that, they did summarize all of that data recently. And so it shows most watersheds in the state decreasing for phosphorus, nitrogen, which is our big concern down here. One of our big concerns down here is still we haven't moved the dial as much on that as we should, especially in our southern watersheds. But there is a summary. We can share that. Yeah.
I mean, I tell you, we would go to other state legislative conventions and we would talk about our Clean Water Act program and the money that we had in Minnesota. And there was rank jealousy with respect to what Minnesota had versus what other states have with respect to resources, money resources.
Definitely true.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Very nice
appreciate
report.
your time.
Appreciate it. All right. Next up, discussion decision item. Budget transfer and authorization to proceed with contract negotiations for visioning of the former Seneca property. Davis.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. James Johnson, Deputy County Administrator and Administrative Services. Today, we're asking the board to consider a budget transfer in the amount of $67,600 to allow us to proceed with contract negotiations and execute a contract with the vendor who was selected to help us with the Seneca Visioning Project. Just a little context to remind us why we're here. Some months back, I believe it was in July, we had a conversation with the board. The board directed staff to proceed with an RFP, put an RFP together, submit it out to the public, look for proposals, and then evaluate them and then come back here. So that's why we're back here today. So that process did take place. We did offer or submit to the public an opportunity for this particular project in the beginning of September, and it closed on September 19th. We did receive 7 proposals from vendors. which were then evaluated by a committee of staff that scored those proposals independently on our own, and then aggregated the data up through our purchasing department. And with all that, there is a recommended vendor that the committee did select that we would proceed with contract negotiations after today if the budget transfer is approved. One thing I'll just mention, just in case in the conversation some details are asked for, we did put in the RCA, or I'm sorry, the request for action in the board packet, some rules on confidentiality. We're trying to be as transparent as possible with this process, but also there are rules of confidentiality. We can't talk about specific proposals, who presented what, et cetera. We can share who the vendors were that submitted a proposal, and I can talk a little bit about the process. With that, if it is approved today as a budget transfer, the next step would be staff would be then negotiating with a selected vendor and executing a contract. So with that, are there any questions or comments, conversations you might have?
I think it would be helpful for you to outline, maybe the purpose and scope
Sure.
of the,
Sure. Yeah, maybe if I can briefly just read a few comments here in case that came up. I did bring this up here. I think the kind of in a nutshell, what the intent of the project would be is in the scope of services that's in your packet. I would call your attention to section 4.2, and I'll just read it here because I think it captures the essence of your question. The purpose of the project is to analyze, evaluate, and provide the most strategic course of action for the future development of the site. Specifically, whether the property should be sold, developed, or incorporated into adjacent or existing holdings. The assessment will consider factors such as market conditions, zoning, entitlement status, financial projections, development potential, and alignment with long-term organizational goals, with a due out back with that visioning back to the board in June of 26. That's the essence of the project. So again, we're talking about the property formerly Seneca property. Yeah.
can you add a little bit about how they would go about doing that, what it would require?
Yeah, I think in some of the details in the proposal, some of the specifics we can't talk about, but obviously some input from staff and
The
from the
RFP
board.
Did.
It
provide
did, yeah.
some
There are
guidance.
some guidance in the RFP with what they're asked to do, analyze relevant data, in community engagement aspects, engagement with the board, engagement with staff, look at data, what's happening in the community, what zoning looks like today, what future projections in the area would look like. Those are all parts of what was asked in the scope of services, which would be included in their proposals, some capacity. So,
Great.
thank you.
Did you mention cost of the recommended proposal?
Yeah, the budget change we would be requesting would be in the amount of $67,600. That would cover the contract costs.
Okay. All right, so what you're asking for us is whether we want to allocate funds to move forward with this.
Correct, yes.
Okay, discussion.
Well, obviously, I support this. I just feel as though, given the investment that the county has made in what I would consider an iconic property, highly visible property in the center of Rochester, and given the backstory, the fact that we haven't been able to, I would say, come together as a leadership team to determine the best course of action on what to do with this property. The fact that we've had several proposals on what to do with it over time. And each time these proposals come in, staff time and effort that goes into it is considerable. This would help eliminate that staff churn. It would provide strategic direction for the county. It would, I think, most importantly, engage the public in determining how they might want to see how this property could be used. That determination wouldn't be definitive, but it could very well be very helpful and useful in the board and county staff and leadership determining how best to utilize this property and the value that it could provide to our community. So, with that, I strongly, support this, and we'll see where it comes out. Commissioner's thoughts? So,
I agree that to this point, we haven't been able to come together with a vision. I'm struggling with the timing. When we look at the headwinds coming at us federally and from the state and looking at budgets, which we know a lot more today than we did sitting in the room when we first started this process. Looking at what we're up against in the next few years, we've already moved CIP, big projects in our CIP that we know that we want to do. We've already kicked some of them back several years. We do this project. We have a vision from the community that says, we think you should do X. I don't know that in the next 5 years, we are going to have any resources to put towards something at that property. And again, there's a lot of moving pieces here that we don't control, right? So that's where I'm questioning whether the timing of this is appropriate and something we should do.
Any others?
Thank you,
Great.
Chair. I think early on I supported this, but since that time, taking into consideration the budget that we've had, taking into consideration Michelle's point, that I really do think that it's time to pull back a little bit. And really, I would like to see the county, first of all, decide the question, is this property, should it be part of Graham Park or not? And I think that would give us better direction for the future if the board wants to decide that first. But I'm not suggesting that we do that today. I'm saying that is a future discussion. And I'm really concerned that we're just going to get the same sort of proposals that we got last time. And I don't think that that's worth the $60,000.
Anybody else? Otherwise,
Mr. Chair, just,
go ahead.
I probably have stared at these 2 pages for an hour or so and just kind of wondering myself, just having gone through the opportunity, and I think some people on the board maybe more than twice, but going through the 2 gyrations of trying to sell this property and ending up with proposals which are virtually giveaway proposals from the standpoint of what we have in it. And then really sort of falling back to the idea that we can give it away if we want to, but standpoint of the public purpose, it's, at least in my opinion, I've sort of fallen to the point of believing it's best to be held in the public domain, and we can figure out a use for it. And so I look at all this and I wonder what the deliverables will be. What will I know after this report is back to me that I don't kind of know already, either by virtue of experience or just instinctively. And so I've got a lot of hesitation just from the standpoint of what more will I know? And I don't believe I'll know a lot more after this report than I already know. And I just think it's time made before the board to sit down and make a decision. And I think we've already almost made the decisions ourselves, whether we're gonna sell it or not. I don't think we've been able to land on anything that is close to anything that we can agree on in terms of a sale price. And so the fallback then is just, default is just put it into a public purpose and then just decide what that is and try to go forward, recognizing, as Michelle has pointed out, that, you know, we've got so much in terms of committed costs already with respect to the, you know, to the exhibition center and the MRF and things like that, that it's going to be difficult to take on another major initiative for this property at this point. So, Mr. Chair, I'm just saying in a very long-winded sort of way, I'm just sort of hesitant to, not a lot of money, it'd be easier to spend it, but what am I going to end up with? And I'm not sure I will end up with anything that's beneficial.
All right, so we need to make an official action. So we either need a motion to transfer the funds or a motion to basically reject forward. Say that's accurate, Jay?
I think that would, we could operate, get whichever one would pass, we can make either one work. Like to do.
Would like to make motion either way.
Mr. Chair, just to be somewhat polite about it, I would move to table it indefinitely so that it does have a chance to come back at some point.
How do we proceed to, we have to respond to a contract, so.
I think
Oh, okay.
responders, yeah, probably have a deadline that they're expecting us, don't they, to? I haven't seen what the RFP requires, but yeah, I think we need to have a response for them. Their proposals are not open-ended.
Right. Anybody else like to make a motion?
Oh,
Like to amend yours?
so I'll be somewhat as polite as I can. I would move that we well, attempt to be polite. I would move that we
120 days.
reject the proposed action at this point on the study, if you will, for the property.
Decline to transfer funds to move forward.
Yeah, I think that's the question we're calling today, is are you gonna authorize the funds to move forward with the contract or not? The other decisions were made that set us down this path. Really, the only question we have for you today is, are you gonna dedicate $67,000 to this project?
I think however you phrase it is acceptable. If you're making a motion to decline this request, then you can just phrase it that way. I think it'll be understood that the budget will remain as it was prior to this coming forward.
That's your motion to decline?
I would move that we decline this request at this time.
Okay. Motion, I need a second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
All in favor of decline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we are on to board and committee reports. Bobby, want to start? On the reports. All right,
No report.
so.
Real quickly, I had the opportunity this week to participate in the agri-growth legislative tour. We toured 10 different agricultural sites in southeast Minnesota, one of them being our farm. But over those 2 days, just had the opportunity to interact with 10 to 15 legislators, both state representatives and state senators, as well as representatives from Minnesota Department of Agriculture, MPCA, et cetera, and had the opportunity to talk about what we're trying to do on Highway 14 as we pulled out on the bus. I talked about the intersections, et cetera. Had a chance to talk to them about system modernization. So just a great opportunity to get to know some of those legislators, help them understand what's happening here in southeast Minnesota, and just really appreciated that opportunity and that interaction with them.
Appreciate you doing it. Great.
No report.
Hey,
Well, I'll report, unless you're going to, that you, Commissioner Tyne and Commissioner Mueller and I took a ride up to decon. It's a, is it decon?
Yeah.
Decon. Yeah, it's a MRF-like facility up in Shakopee, a fabulous facility, big investment up there, a lot of activity, and we got to see a little bit of what a MRF might look like in terms of operation, and that was valuable. A good short kind of morning trip and up and back. The other thing I just want to kind of say, just I think we just need to maybe come to Jesus with respect to, the Seneca property one way or another. 4 votes, no matter which way it goes, we ought to decide and put it to bed for 5 years, one way or another.
We should probably have discussions about this moving forward. Okay. I'll add a short report. Commissioners Rossman, Mueller, and I were invited to, as the rural commissioners, to speak to the Isaiah Group in Byron last week and about how changes in Medicare and SNAP benefits and other changes at the state level too will affect our residents. And Meredith Braun and staff prepared us. Meredith presented to the group that was there, and I think everybody left that meeting a lot more educated and a lot of their fears allayed. That the Olmsted County is doing a great job and will handle this moving forward, and it's not as dire as some of our leaders have led us to believe. Changes are real, but they're catastrophic for the majority of people. So staff did a fantastic job there. They just really kind of carried us, and we're up there for decorative reasons, essentially. So that was nice. That's the only update I got. I'll end with a very short quote. The quote is from Karen Lamb, and it says, "A year from now, you may wish you had started today." So.
Move to adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
We got a short list of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anybody on the board that blocked that?
Greg and I voted against it. We're left to pick up the pieces.
That's right. Are you want the good news and the bad news? Well, it's not very good or very bad, just that good news is you're here, but the bad news is
There's not.
yeah, there's not. The notary is not. I'm a notary, but I can bring my stamp. I'm one of the people signing this.
Then David's notary. Right there.
Okay, I just used messenger and respond, so.
Yeah.
Sit out.
But I think that we need
Extra
to
time now to sign as well, so.
this
Imagine he's gotta get some lunch before they go on to that admin committee.
I'm here for admin.
You are, okay, all
I
right.
mean, there's gotta be, I don't care.
So,
Tuesday,
One,
I will.
that would be a temporary one. Then.
Right, exactly. But the 80 of this thing, so.
I told